created a quilt that uses a lot of fabrics and wondered pretty early on how you're going to keep track of each individual color and its role in your quilt. Today, I am excited to show you how to make an easy, personalized color card on both paper and fabric. My name is Holly Ann Knight of String & Story, and it is my job to guide you to quilt with confidence. Come with me as we dive on into this easy color card project. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to make a personalized color card as I work on color cards for our Endangered Species Block of the Month. This year at String & Story, this foundation paper piece project features 12 different endangered species and amazing paper piece pattern portraying their likeness. Now, as you can see, it also uses a whole lot of colors. And when I'm working on any project that uses a lot of fabrics like this, a couple of things immediately come to mind. One is, how am I going to keep track of which is which, especially on a project like this where I'm using all solids and some of these lighter neutral colors can look really similar. The other thought that immediately comes to mind is if I'm working with reds or purples, batiks, or maybe fabrics I'm not as familiar with, I want to know, are any of these fabrics going to bleed? We have a really wide range of color here, and how am I going to make sure that everything's going to make it through the wash safely at the end? Now, of course, one way that you can start with this is if you are a pre-washer of your fabric, this may apply to you a little bit less, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not one who tends to pre-wash, so this gives me an opportunity to pre-wash just some swatches rather than pre-washing all of my fabric from the get-go. So as you can see here, I have already created one version of this color card. This is just on simple cardstock. I've written down a list of all of the different fabrics that are going to be in this quilt. And these are by color family, and each of them start with the lightest and go to the darkest. So here at the top, I have my light, medium, and dark gray, then my light, medium, and dark red, and so on and so forth. If you are working with a quilt that maybe labels colors by numbers, so for example, color 1, color 2, color 3, background, you may want to put that along with the color or fabric name over here on the side, all right? Then down this side, I've simply stitched little bits of each of these fabrics over to the side. Together, we're going to make this second color card. We're going to follow the exact same layout, but you'll notice that this time we're going to put the fabric swatches directly on a piece of light colored fabric. This is rice paper. It happens to be the lightest color in this quilt. It would also be a great idea if you're working with a color or a quilt that has a very specific background that you may want to make your color card on that background color. When we're done, we can toss this in the wash with a color catcher and get an idea of if we're going to have any fabrics that are going to have an issue bleeding. Now, this particular project that I'm making, I am using Paintbrush Studio solids. The Painter's Palette solids are my personal favorite brand. They're nice and thick with a good hand, really rich colors, but also very soft, so we don't get a lot of pulling or fraying as we're going along. Personally, I've never had any issue with any of these colors having any issues bleeding. But it never hurts to double check, and if they're new to you, it might be a good idea for you to see for yourself how color fast these fabrics are and make adjustments accordingly. You ready to get started? Let's go. As you can see here, before we got started, I went ahead and did a teeny tiny bit of prep work in order to help this tutorial go a little more smoothly. All right, I already created a sample here of all of our colors on paper, so you can get an idea of what the total effect is going to be when we finish. I also snipped little bits off of each fabric that I am using inside of this quilt that I am making. So I have fabrics here that came in a lovely bundle. They're all labeled with the fabric name, but you know, I'm a little nervous that maybe that's not going to stay on the whole time that we're working. That's part of why I want this color card. But it's also just a good record for future Holly Ann of what colors showed up in this project, especially if I maybe want to use any of these colors in a future quilt, or if I need to buy more for any reason, all right? So what I did here is I just found a little corner on each fabric where the selvage is, and I just snipped a little corner off. Because I knew I'd be making two, I went ahead and snipped two, so you can see over here that I've already got our little triangles all laid out in the correct color order for our second color card, all right? I've labeled the project at the top. You may want to put just any relevant information up at the top of this color card. So if there's a specific designer, if there's a specific date that you're working on, et cetera, et cetera. I'm using a simple fine tip permanent marker, and I'm going to begin writing these color names down the fabric so that they're labeled in the order that we're going to stitch them on. Now, we'll do our best to line them up so that they're being stitched across from their name, but where it's not completely perfect, we at least can check and go in order, all right? The hardest thing with using this many different fabrics is going to be fitting all of these names onto our piece of fabric here. I like to use a permanent marker because this is very similar to what I use for labeling my quilt, so I know that it's going to have reasonable color fastness as it goes through the wash. And I can also hit this with an iron before we actually wash it to help heat set this ink a little bit so that it's even less likely to wash out. After labeling our fabric swatches, time to stitch our little fabric triangles down our color card. I put these on a few at a time and lower my presser foot onto the top of the first triangle. At the top of my stitching row, I am going to add a little bit of a back stitch just to make sure that this is going to stay nice and secure, especially since we may put this through the washing machine later. I will add triangles 1 to 3 at a time as I continue on down, if necessary using my knee bar in order to lift up the needle and the presser foot just a little bit to wiggle everything under there so that I can stitch smoothly. Once you finish stitching all of your fabric samples onto that background fabric, there's just 2 final steps I would recommend before you toss this in the wash. The first is I would take a zigzag stitch and run all the way around the edge of your little homemade color card, just to make sure that this background fabric doesn't fray too much as you wash it or as you handle it. The second thing is I would take a hot iron and kind of hit these letters that we've written with our permanent marker here. All of the writing that we've done, just heat set it with a quick press from the iron. Once that cools, you'll be good to go, and you can toss this in the wash to check for any fading or running or bleeding or anything else we want to make sure we don't have from our fabric. From there, this becomes a really fabulous tool for future color matching, for knowing which fabrics you used where, and keeping track as you're going through your project. I hope this has been a helpful tutorial about 2 different ways to make your own personal project-based color card. Again, I'm Holly Ann Knight of String and Story. It is my job to guide you to quilt with confidence. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to check the caption of this video for more helpful